Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The South China Sea is a volatile stage, a vast expanse of blue where the ambitions of nations collide. Here, China and the Philippines find themselves locked in a tense standoff over Scarborough Shoal, a seemingly minor chain of reefs and rocks that has become a symbol of much larger struggles. What might look like a remote outcrop to the untrained eye is, in reality, a flashpoint that could ignite regional conflict and draw in powers from around the world. This isn't just a territorial dispute. It's a test of international law, a challenge to the rules that have governed the seas for decades. The stakes are enormous. Over $3 trillion in global commerce passes through these waters every year, making the South China Sea one of the world's most vital arteries for trade and energy. Every container ship, every oil tanker, every fishing boat that crosses these waters is a reminder of how interconnected our world has become and how fragile that connection can be. The world watches with bated breath as this precarious dance grows more aggressive. Each maneuver, each close encounter between rival ships is scrutinized by governments and media alike. The risk of miscalculation is ever present, threatening to plunge not just the region, but the entire world into a crisis that could spiral out of control. For the Philippines, the stakes are deeply personal. It's about the livelihoods of thousands of fishermen who have relied on these waters for generations. Their right to fish in their own exclusive economic zone is not just a matter of national pride, but of daily survival. Each day they venture out, risking confrontation and even violence simply to provide for their families. For China, the issue is about more than just territory. It's about asserting sovereignty and projecting power, even in the face of international rulings that reject its claims. The Chinese government sees control over the South China Sea as a matter of national destiny, a way to secure resources, protect shipping lanes, and demonstrate its growing influence on the world stage. This conflict is a struggle between might and right, between the power of force and the principles of international law. The outcome will shape not only the future of the South China Sea, but the very nature of global order. With so much at stake, the world's stability hangs in the balance, teetering on the edge of uncertainty. As tensions rise and ships draw ever closer, the question is not if a miscalculation will occur, but when. One wrong move, one misunderstood signal, could trigger a chain reaction with consequences far beyond these waters. The world must pay close attention, for the harmony of global stability depends on the notes being played in the South China Sea. What happens here will echo across continents, shaping the future of peace, prosperity, and the rule of law for generations to come. Scarborough Shoal, a ring of rocks and reefs in the South China Sea, has long been a lifeline for generations of Filipino fishermen. For centuries, these waters have provided not just a source of livelihood, but also a deep cultural connection for coastal communities in the Philippines. The shoal's rich marine life has sustained families, shaped local traditions, and fostered a sense of belonging to the sea. Geographically, Scarborough Shoal lies well within the Philippines' Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, as defined by international law. This 200 nautical mile zone grants the Philippines special rights to explore and use marine resources, making the shoal a vital part of the nation's economic and environmental future. However, China asserts sweeping claims over the South China Sea, including Scarborough Shoal, based on its controversial 9-dash line, a boundary that stretches far beyond its own shores. This claim overlaps with the EEZs of several Southeast Asian nations, igniting disputes and raising questions about the legitimacy of maritime boundaries. Tensions reached a boiling point in 2012, when a standoff between Chinese and Philippine vessels ended with China seizing effective control of the shoal. The incident sparked outrage in the Philippines, leading to widespread protests and a diplomatic crisis that reverberated throughout the region. In response, the Philippines turned to international law, filing a case for arbitration at The Hague. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration ruled overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines, declaring China's 9-dash line invalid under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The tribunal affirmed that Scarborough Shoal is a traditional fishing ground for multiple nations, and that China's actions had violated the Philippines' sovereign rights. Despite this landmark ruling, China rejected the decision outright, continuing to enforce its blockade with Coast Guard and military vessels. Filipino fishermen still face harassment and intimidation, unable to freely access the waters that once sustained their communities. This ongoing defiance of international law has fueled persistent tension and frequent confrontations at sea. Every attempt by the Philippines to assert its rights is met with aggressive Chinese responses, escalating the risk of conflict and deepening mistrust between the two nations. Today, Scarborough Shoal stands as a powerful symbol of a much larger geopolitical contest, one that involves not just the Philippines and China, but also neighboring countries and global powers. The struggle over this small patch of sea reflects the broader battle for influence, resources, and the future governance of the South China Sea. On September 16, 2025, a Philippine mission to resupply fishing boats near Scarborough Shoal faced aggressive Chinese harassment. Chinese vessels fired water cannons, injuring a Filipino crew member and damaging a ship. China claimed the Philippines provoked the incident, but Manila decried this as propaganda. This is part of a pattern of escalating aggression, with tactics like military-grade lasers and dangerous maneuvers. Water cannons have become China's tool of coercion, asserting dominance while maintaining plausible deniability. For those on the receiving end, it's a violent assault risking fatal miscalculations. China's plan to establish a nature reserve on Scarborough Shoal is seen as a move to solidify control, excluding Filipino fishermen under the guise of conservation. This drew condemnation from Manila and allies, with the US labeling it coercive. China's military warned the Philippines against escalating tensions following joint exercises with the US and Japan. This tit-for-tat escalation creates a cycle of confrontation, with the Philippines seeking stronger security guarantees. The red line set by President Marcos Jr. looms large as each side tests the other's resolve. The stakes are high in this high-stakes game of chicken. The conflict over Scarborough Shoal has a devastating human cost for Filipino fishermen who rely on these waters for their livelihood. Since China's blockade, fishermen face harassment and financial ruin, forced to fish in less productive waters. The psychological toll is immense, with fear and humiliation as constant companions. The government's resupply missions are framed as humanitarian acts, but patriotism doesn't fill empty stomachs. Fishermen are caught in a geopolitical storm, their simple livelihoods tossed by the ambitions of nations. They are the first casualties of this conflict, a stark reminder of the human cost of geopolitical ambition. The US is a central actor in the South China Sea, linked to the Philippines through the Mutual Defense Treaty. This treaty acts as both a deterrent and a potential tripwire for conflict, with the US committed to defending Philippine forces. The US challenges China's claims through freedom of navigation operations, asserting these are international waters. This presence supports regional partners but also fuels US-China rivalry, turning a regional dispute into a global competition. The US walks a tightrope, deterring aggression without provoking conflict. The stakes are high, with every encounter at sea raising the risk of a larger confrontation. Analysts warn that the current trajectory in the South China Sea is unsustainable as tensions continue to mount between regional powers. The area, rich in resources and vital shipping lanes, has become a flashpoint for competing territorial claims, with no clear resolution in sight. Experts point out that the ongoing disputes are not just about sovereignty, but also about control over lucrative fisheries, potential energy reserves, and strategic military positioning. The stakes are high, and the world is watching closely as events unfold. China has increasingly relied on so-called gray zone tactics, actions that fall short of open warfare but are designed to assert dominance and normalize its control over contested waters. These tactics include deploying Coast Guard vessels, building artificial islands, and using civilian fishing fleets as proxies, all while avoiding direct military confrontation. The risk of miscalculation is high, with each side interpreting the other's moves through a lens of suspicion. Even a minor incident could quickly escalate, as military and Coast Guard ships operate in close quarters, often with little room for error or de-escalation. Aggressive maneuvers such as ramming, water cannon use, or blocking access to disputed reefs increase the potential for deadly incidents. The crowded waters are a tinderbox where a single misstep could have catastrophic consequences. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s recent declaration of a red line has heightened the stakes even further. By publicly stating that certain actions by China would trigger a forceful response, the Philippines has drawn a clear boundary, one that, if crossed, could lead to direct confrontation. The Philippines now faces immense pressure, both domestically and internationally, to uphold its sovereignty and respond decisively if provoked. Military preparations and strategic planning have intensified, as leaders weigh the risks of escalation against the need to defend national interests. Meanwhile, China is likely to escalate pressure, especially as the Philippines strengthens its security ties with allies like the United States, Japan, and Australia. Joint military exercises and increased cooperation signal a growing resolve to counter Chinese assertiveness, but they also risk provoking a stronger response from Beijing. Diplomacy remains the best hope for avoiding open conflict. The best-case scenario is a tense but managed status quo, where all parties exercise restraint and continue to engage in dialogue even as they prepare for the worst. The worst-case scenario, however, is a deadly incident such as a collision or exchange of fire, spiraling into a larger conflict that could draw in regional and even global powers, with devastating consequences for peace and stability. As the world's attention turns to the South China Sea, international organizations and major powers are calling for restraint and dialogue. The United Nations, ASEAN, and other stakeholders are urging all sides to respect international law and seek peaceful solutions. The next chapter in this high-stakes standoff is about to unfold, with global stability hanging in the balance. The choices made in the coming months will shape the future of the region and perhaps the world for years to come. The Scarborough Shoal standoff is a bellwether for the Indo-Pacific, with implications for nations like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Taiwan. If China cements control, it sets a precedent that might trump law, emboldening similar tactics elsewhere. Economically, the South China Sea is vital, with disruptions impacting global trade and energy prices. The conflict accelerates a regional arms race and realignment of strategic partnerships, reminiscent of a new Cold War. ASEAN struggles to maintain neutrality, with regional unity threatened by US-China competition. Scarborough Shoal is a microcosm of this larger struggle, revealing deep fractures in regional security. The Scarborough Shoal saga is a complex narrative of Coast Guard actions, presidential decisions, and fishermen's courage. It's a story of international law versus national power, with global security and economic stability at stake. The events of September 2025 are not a conclusion but part of an ongoing saga shaping our world. The outcome will affect global peace and prosperity, with the path forward shrouded in uncertainty. The choices made in Manila, Beijing, and Washington will determine the future, with the international community's resolve crucial. We must remain engaged and informed as the narrative of Scarborough Shoal continues to unfold.